It's March 11th, 2022. I'm Sonatina, and this is Linguistics You Can Use. Welcome to Crafting Sound Meaning, the channel where we discuss linguistics and how that applies to how we live our lives. If that is interesting to you, stick around. We're going to chat today about a topic that I am being very tested by today. And that is rushing, hurrying. Like, okay, today I thought I had everything set up. I was all excited to share my new system, my new kind of setup here. And then something happened in my settings, in my tech settings, and I had to oh, what is going on? Oh goodness. And that was not planned. I did not plan that, but it worked well. So, as an example of today's topic, which is, right, rushing. And we'll give a special shout out to one of my childhood uh, singing icons, Paula Abdul, for the inspiration of today's episode. Did it come about because I did forget to just plan something for this week? And so I put this up last night? Yes. And that is why that song coming up into my head was like, hey, you know what? That's a good word. What is rush all about? What is that word? Rushing, hurrying. Is there other things that we can look at in terms of that word? So join me and let's delve into this concept a little bit more together. I'm learning my system. I think this is where the last time bit rate. That's weird. It says it's lower, but I have volume. Oh, maybe I don't. You know I do. Microphone. Yes, hello? Yeah, this is, oh, maybe I'll turn it up a little. Yeah, is that better? I'm still figuring out this system. That's what we do. And that's what we're talking about today is what does it take, right, to really understand ideas and concepts? And what does it mean to really know something? So, to start, right, I want to talk about why my brain grabbed a hold of this, right? So I mentioned, I kind of spaced. My brain was like, hey, um, you're good on that whole live stream thing. You know what you're doing. So don't worry about it. And then I was like, oh wait, I didn't put up a thing today. So last night I hurried, I rushed, and that was why my brain was like, hey, you should do this now. This is good, important, urgent. So I'm going to bring us to on a little bit of a detour, and let's talk about other areas and why of my life or your life or anybody's life that are going on at the same time, right? And why this particular topic also may have, clicked for me even if I hadn't been rushing about this particular episode, right? So that brings me to the idea of coincidences and manifestation. Now, don't worry, we're going to get back to the word rush, right? This is a linguistics channel after all, and I'm all about the language, bringing it back to the language. I just want to give us, a little bit of context for us to hang out in before we get to the technical aspects of the linguistics exercise today. So, well, exercise, just the linguistics today, right? Okay. So, right, let's talk about coincidence first. And I'm not going to get into the definitions of this word. That's not the word we're looking at today. So we're just going to talk about this in terms of how I understand it right now, which is when two things happen in relation to each other that don't really actually have anything to do with each other, though it seems like they might based on the perspective of the person making that connection. If that is unclear, let's break it down a little. So, uh, that's distracting. The way that our brains, right, make sense of the world is about how it previously made a connection, right? Our brain is designed to build on what it previously learned, right? We know, and then we're like, okay, well, I know that, for instance, you know, in the time we're learning just the basics idea of what words are, right? Like this is a common thing that's brought up in linguistic circles, right? What is a dog versus a cat, right? So in somebody's life, in a child's life, if they're growing up in a household where they have both a dog and a cat, on initial introduction, these two creatures are likely to be one thing in this child's mind, right? They're tinier than the big people that take care of it. They don't talk, they don't communicate the way that the big people that take care of it do. They are different, they look different, they feel different, all of these differences, but they look very similar to each other. So there's a high probability that in the child's mind, those two creatures are basically different kinds of the same thing, which, they are if we get back really deep into it. But in terms of our culture, the way that we treat these creatures and the way these creatures want us to treat them, they are very, very different. So it's important that the child begins to be able to distinguish between the two of them so it can be able to have an individual relationship with each one. We're getting to rush, don't worry. So, connections, right? This is how we make connections. One, uh, you know, creature barks and is always wagging its tail when it's happy. The other creature meows and hisses and is always wagging its tail when it's not happy. One, really, really likes to run around and catch things. One really likes to, just hang out and watch the world, and things. So like the child begins to like, okay, so these two things are different. So do they still how are they, and this process, right, this learning process of distinguishing between these two very, very similar creatures, while they have different behaviors, so do all of the big people around it, right? And so in its development of trying to understand the world, it's like, okay, well, this group the big people call dog, and they group it with this other group that doesn't look necessarily like it but acts more like it, and then the other one is called a cat, and the big people group that one in with all these other things that look really similar to it. Like there's not a lot of difference between cats, like color wise, but like they're all pretty similar right now in terms of morphogenics and all that. So right, it's these concepts become separated. That process takes, right, a year, 2, 3, you know, we go to school for years. We as a culture are one that has, it's necessary for us to, right, be able to teach our young ones for over a decade in order to basically function in our society. And in that way, I find it interesting that when we become, right, ourselves, when we become an adult, the world is like, okay, we spent a decade and two maybe educating you. You have another decade or two to really do something. Go. And it's like, but why? Like, in my head, right, like this is one of those things, right, where we are analyzing what is this word rush? Why does it bring to mind these things, this idea, right? This is my examination of this word, right? I'm thinking I have a lot of cultural baggage around rushing, even though I know it is good to have an urgency about you sometimes. And so I, you know, what is it? Yes. Okay. So there's this sense of, you know, rushing has a negative connotation, right? In a way. At the same time, our culture is like, hey, you know what? You should probably want to be very rushing and you want to be hurry and hustle culture and all that stuff. And here it's like, oh, but I don't, but I do, but I don't. And I'm not going to get into the economic stuff today. I could. And if you've been here before, you know I could, but like I'm not going to today. Today we're talking about more, um, you know, kind of what, why do we feel this urgency to complete certain things versus others? Right? And one of the things that came to mind as I was analyzing this word is that the reason that rush has this negative connotation in some contexts is that we associate it with sloppiness in a way, right? Like um, it has this, it creates this bit of tension in my body at least, probably in yours too. You're like, rush, hurry, come on, come on. All of a sudden you're like, I gotta move, and your brain sort of kind of like doesn't know what to focus on. And you know, I think that's probably a biological, evolutionary tactic that our brains and our bodies kind of worked on together in the times where we were being chased around by animals that wanted to eat us. So, like, yeah, urgency is good. Like, we want to feel this sense of, like, oh no, I need to run now. And, like, our body is like, yes, give me the energy, give me the adrenaline, give me that. And then uh, we, need to expend that energy somehow. We don't have way a lot of times to expend this energy of urgency, this sense of I need to hurry and rush. So, this is where this is coming from, right? To rush, rushing, it brings to our body feelings of having to move fast. But does it have to? I was, writing a lot of these notes and script these notes last night before this episode airs because, as I said earlier, I kind of spaced on this week's episode, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm in a hurry. I need to get this out. So I was in a rushing mode, right? I had that physical and sense of like, all right, let's go. And knowing, like being conscious of that, oops, being conscious of that process of what, I needed to do in that moment helped me feel the urgency without feeling like the rushing I was doing was going to create sloppiness, right? And I think there's many people like me in in the world who work well under this physical sense of urgency. You may know us as procrastinators. Um, and yeah, that the reason that a lot of people, right, leave work to the last minute is because they tell themselves and others that they work best under that pressure. And it's probably true. I feel I work very well under that pressure. And I like to um, get it out as fast as I can. I don't want there to be this, like, you know, break between my brain and my fingers sometimes. So I was typing with urgency last night, right? I'm trying to get it out. But I wasn't really trying to type it any faster. I wasn't pressuring myself to speed through the writing. I was in a rushing mode, and I decided to frame that, right, in terms of a focus. Right? I needed to get this done. I needed to get this out. And that meant I was able to work in this state, this, kind of what you may have heard of a flow state. I was focused. I was going to I was going to spend 15 minutes on this task and just get out my thoughts. And as the thoughts came, I wasn't going to let myself, do much editing, if any, and just let myself feel the urgency through the words coming out. And, as I read back through the notes, as I prepare for today's, this morning, uh, I'm like, oh, yeah, funny. It is interesting how less pressure, less urgency, less rushing I feel. Whereas, you know, in a previous time of my life, I very well may have waited until the morning. So let's talk about, right, the idea of being in a rushing mode and not being overwhelmed by that sense of like stress. So I try to have, I try to mitigate that, right, with what I was saying earlier, I was saying about telling myself why I am feeling this way. When I bring myself into that state of there was an instigator to this moment, I need to recognize that instigation. What is that instigation? Okay. Why is that creating that inside of me? Is there something that I can do now to make this sense of urgency, this sense of, you know, it is a sense of pressure, right? Something needs to get out, something needs to be done. And when it is done, that sense of hurrying and rushing goes away. Even though there may be other parts to it, when I'm able to focus on what it is at this very moment I am feeling pressure about, what I'm feeling stressed over, it helps me take away that overwhelmingness of everything that sometimes my brain falls into, right? Um, so we have this sense of urgency that we want to feed into. And I think you might know where I'm going with this. We like to leave things until the last minute to feel that sense of urgency. So, what do? We set deadlines before the actual thing in order to give ourselves this, some say, artificial sense of urgency. And now I'm going to get into this. This is where I feel the topic came together for me as I was working on this for myself. It's not that I am creating an artificial deadline for myself when I feel this sense of urgency the night before an episode. In the past, I very well may have waited until the morning of in order to create the script and the live stream. And part of that would have been because I had this sense of, well, I'm already late. The overwhelm, like there's too much, right? And so if if it's not done now, I'll do everything tomorrow because I'm already in this state. And so I'm already working on it tomorrow. I might as well just do it. And that, made it so that I didn't really feel the ultimate urgency until the morning up. And then once I had started to realize that, no, I actually didn't have time in the morning before the episode. I have other things that I do to get prepared for an episode now. And now that sense of urgency happens naturally the night before because I've trained my brain to recognize, no, I have no time. This is the deadline. If I don't do this now, the rushing is going to get intense and it's not going to be good, right? So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring us to in this conversation, right? Is having the sense of urgency when you would need to feel it. Trying not to let the outside world dictate the time, letting you train yourself to say, this is the feeling I want to feel now so that I can do this work. So, I was doing so well. Oh, I think it's, I think YouTube is like wanting me to like be louder, I guess. Let's see. Maybe if I do this. Okay, I'm louder now. I hope this helps Google be like less mad at me. Um, YouTube is like telling me that I'm having bad audio bandwidth, and I'm like, but it says to me that I'm streaming. Okay, so I did not prepare my dictionary today. I meant to, but I was in a bit of a hurry because I forgot about today's episode. So we're going to just like go through the dictionary and look through R and look up rush. So, what does my childhood dictionary say about this word all the way towards the end? Because RUS is very close to the end of the alphabet. Rush. To move with speed and violence. Whoo! Wow. I wonder if that's still in there. This is one of those moments where I've always been interested. I need to see now, absolutely, 100%, what Merriam-Webster's has as this definition now, because that's one of the most surprising ones I think that I've ever read out of this book with violence. It's amazing. So let's see. So dictionary, rush. Okay. The current definition. Okay. Wow, that sounds a lot more like the current one. Okay, so I'm going to read this in a second, but first I want to go through the childhood one because this is actually a great, good example of how language, right, changes and shapes, and the tools that we use have a lot of impact on how we understand things. Okay, so rush. The first definition: to move with speed and violence. So, to hasten. Well, these are all in terms of the verb, but anyway. To move with speed and violence. To hasten. To appear or seem to appear swiftly. To act swiftly with too little reflection. To cause to move or be moved with great speed. To cause to decide or act hastily. To get past or over with violent movement. To take by sudden attack. To carry the ball forward in a running play. And then there's some, specific definitions in terms of like, specific areas of life. But we're going to go into the second definition. A violent forward movement or the sound of it. A movement of many people to a place or region to be occupied or exploited. Feverish movement. a sudden burst of activity, the state of being busy and pressed for time, violent inflow of an emotion, a sudden access, the first surge of pleasure produced by a drug, with a great demand for a commodity. And then again, there are some specific, ones for areas. But let's go into the third definition, which is an adjective, which is needing to be dealt with or done very quickly. Characterized by enormous bustle and activity. Whew. So that's like the verb. So, okay, so that's like, you can see that's got a movement in that definition. And there's a lot of definitions. There's one definition, or there's one category for the verb VI. I can't remember what VI stands for in terms of grammar, but like that's what's there. And then there's VT, and then and then the second definition is the noun of this. But then there's another one. Oh wait, no, that's a technical one. So any various members of Juncus. Yeah, sounds like a plant. It's a rush, right? Oh yeah, a rush plant. Yeah, we used to use those. Is like, well, people still probably do use them. Yeah, rushes are still used all over the place. It's like for like stuff. Anyway, let's talk about the action. Rush as a verb and a noun, basically. So I just read to you, right? I said my childhood dictionary. Now, in the dictionary online, they have the first entry as the plant definition, but we're going to go into the verb definition, which they also have as, rushed, rushing, and rushes. So intransitive verb, see, this is why, online dictionaries are neat, because they tell you the full thing and you can actually just see it or look it up there. But anyway, getting on. So let's talk about the intransitive verb. Now, what the definition is. Rush. To move forward, progress, or act with haste or eagerness or without preparation. Second, to advance a football by running plays. Can't get out of football. So we now have the first definition, the intransitive verb being this to move forward, progress, or act with haste or eagerness or without preparation, right? So there's many ways that rush can be done, and it doesn't have to mean without preparation. It doesn't have to mean haste, eagerness, right? That's a way you can define rushing in you, and you can define and say, I feel this rushing sensation, and that means I am eager to do this thing. What is the best way for me to do this thing right now so I can feel good about getting it done? That's what I try to do with my scripts now. Whenever I'm like, okay, I need to do that. And right now, right, I'm working on developing a sense of urgency a few days before, right? Because I'm trying to get more things in my schedule that I need to get done for this broadcast live stream. So that sense of urgency peaks up a little bit earlier. It's not an artificial deadline, right? It is an actual real deadline in my life. If I want to make sure that the other things in the plan get done, I need to make sure that I make a script, that I have notes, that I'm able to do, a little bit of research. So yeah, to move forward, progress, or act with haste or eagerness or without preparation. Let's focus on the eagerness, right? Okay, so transitive verb. Don't worry about grammar right now. Let's just focus on, definitions and what they make you feel like, okay? So, to push or impel on or forward with speed, impetuosity, with speed, impetuosity, or violence. Still get violence in there, right? So it does seem like, right, in our culture, there is this sense of fast movement, this hurrying, this rush has a sense of violence to it, that you must disrupt something in order to be experiencing this word somehow. Um, Second definition for the transitive verb, to perform in a short time or at high speed. 3, to urge to an unnatural or extreme speed. 4, to run toward or attack, or to run toward or against in attack, a charge basically. And then 5 has 2. 5A is to carry a ball forward in a running play, and B is to move in quickly on a kicker or passer to hinder, prevent, or block a pass. Oh, I see. Yes, this is football. You know, it's funny. Well, I guess it should. This feels like a football. Well, maybe other sports have this as well, but anyway. And then to lavish attention. Oh, 6 has also 2. 6A, 6B. 6A is to lavish attention on. Court, to court. And then B is to try to secure a pledge of membership as in a fraternity form. Those were actually in here as well. In the older dictionary, my childhood one, those are the ones that I was like, oh, these are very specific to a thing. So, we're not going to really deal with those today. But here they don't really tie them necessarily. So like, yeah, that's another example, right, of who is creating the structure of the information you're learning, and what does that say about the information? That's a tangent we might get into another day. But let's talk about the second definition of rush, the noun definition on the dictionary online, which is 1 is A, a violent forward motion, B, attack, onset, C, a surging of emotion. 2, second definition of rush as a noun, A, a burst of activity, productivity, or speed, B, a sudden insistent demand. And how about the third definition of rush is, as a noun, is a thronging of people, usually to a new place in search of wealth. I believe that one here in the childhood dictionary talked about exploitation. So it's interesting, right? The words that we use to define other words have a big thing. And then I'm going to skip the football ones. 5 has a round of attention, usually involving extensive social activity, which I guess is B, a drive by a fraternity. Then we have movie stuff. Oh, and this is one I thought was relevant to a lot of people. The immediate pleasurable feeling produced by a drug such as heroin or cocaine, by a drug. So yeah, it's funny the way that different definitions work. Rush is also an adjective, right? Requiring or marked by special speed or urgency. So this journey of rush, right? Talking about this, why do we feel a way about a word? When we determine, right, how we want to act based on the signals that our bodies give us, we have a little bit more control about how we are able to conduct our lives, right? Whether you believe in free will or not, right? We know that we have biological urges, and we know that we, in this moment, choose to react in a certain way or not. And if you choose to, train yourself to react in one way or another, sometimes we can, get our goals done a little bit easier. So that's our episode for today. I hope this hustling chat about rush helps you get out there and have some fun crafting sound meaning. I'm doing it opposite this time. So as a tag, right, if you do want to work with me, I do this on a one-on-one basis, or I have a class that we can go through a lot of this material. So I wanted to mention, some people have been asking, what do you do this for? I actually do this. I train people like you who might want to do this, in your life, and have somebody to help you along with you. Help you along on the journey of understanding how you understand the world, right? So, yeah, go ahead and check out my website. It is in the description box. Send me a message, let me know what you think about Russian and hurrying and hustle and all of those things. And I hope to see you next time on Crafting Sound Meaning. That's all the linguistics you can use this week. Have a great week, and I will see you soon.